All right, hey everyone. Welcome to the Faces of Learning Student Researcher panel. We're going to go ahead and get started in a couple minutes. In the meantime, if you want to just enter in the chat what's on your lunch menu for today. I'm eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Well, I just finished eating one, so I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat. When you're chatting, if you want to choose the option that says all panelists and attendees, go ahead and share what you ate for lunch today or what you're about to eat, and we'll get started in a minute. All right, Melinda had a burrito. Nice, I like it. Dolores, coffee. Come on, Dolores, gotta get some food in there. Rebecca, green curry veggies. Awesome. Marcos, you can find me on DoorDash. I'll bring you some food. Octavio, tamales. Oh, nice. Tostadas from Lily. Dang, you're eating some good stuff. Taco chip banana bread. Oh, nice, tasty. Madison, hopefully you get a chance to eat during your break. Janine, chocolate chip cookies, solid lunch. Oh, there you go. Mixing it up with some strawberries too. All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second just to stop the music and show you all of our panelists for today. And I'll stop the music on my end too. So here we are. So before we get started, I'm just going to cover a couple of announcements really quickly. So first, just wanted to let everyone know who's attending this today that we will have a recording of the event available afterwards. So that'll be on our webpage, sjsu.edu/education/faces. In that recording, there will be captions available. All of you who are attending this event today, your video and audio are automatically turned off, so you don't have to worry about being visible in the recording today. But if you do have a question or comments, feel free to use the chat at any time during the event to communicate with one another. You can ask questions of our panelists. We will have some time for questions a little bit later too, so if you want to ask a question verbally, you can use that button at the bottom of your Zoom window that says raise hand, and then we can go ahead and activate your microphone so that you can go ahead and speak to them directly. So now I'm going to go ahead and transition it off to our Dean, Heather Latimer, who's going to talk a little bit more about our Future of Learning initiative and the Faces of Learning project before we get into the panel. Take it away, Heather.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks so much to everybody for coming today. We are really excited to be able to share this work. This is about 9 months in the making. It's part of our larger Future of Learning initiative that is really asking the question of where do we want to go around educational transformation in the imagination age? And that's educational transformation P20, as we look at the changing conditions that our society is encountering even before this COVID-19 challenge around advances in technology, changing job markets, demographic shifts, and new understandings of learning and cognition. It does provide us with an urgency around reimagining what learning could look like to become stronger, more equitable, and produce more relevant outcomes for our students and our society. And at San Jose State University, as a public urban institution with a very diverse student body, we have a unique position to really lead that conversation around what works in identifying what works in diverse educational ecosystems. We have deep roots in our community and our region. We're the hub of Silicon Valley's educational ecosystem, and we have a strong tradition of engaged scholarship and applied research. So really seeing this as a space where San Jose State has the opportunity to be a leading voice, a leading institution in shaping the future of learning more broadly. And as part of that, it's really critically important for us that student voices are at the heart of this work. Our students are a huge resource within our university, and sometimes it can be challenging in the midst of all that we're encountering on a daily basis to take that step back and really ask students to reflect on their own learning. So this project was an opportunity to ask our students to think about what learning looks like for them. So with the support of Brittany Kirtner, who is one of our graduate students in the College of Education in our Department of Counselor Education, we invited 6 undergraduate students, some of whom are in our college, some of whom are connected to colleges across campus, to really take the lead on being co-researchers and investigating the learning experiences of their peers. So they went out and used a participatory photography approach to interview their colleagues and their peers around what learning looks like for them. They then documented that both through collecting the narrative account as well as through the photography exhibit that we have now curated, and are going to share today what they learned as a result of that process. So that's a little bit of the background. As I mentioned earlier, it's been about 9 months in the making altogether, but the researchers have been working on this for about 6 months. And I hope you all had a chance to take a look at the Faces of Learning book that they have created. It's a virtual book, and in every page of that book, it has a image that is a powerful image that the students created around what learning looks like for them, and then a narrative caption that is a direct quote from the interviews that our co-researchers conducted with the students. And if you haven't had a chance to yet, I would encourage you to take that. You know, there's some wonderful things, there's some challenging things, but taken as a whole, it's a really good picture of what our students' experiences look like at San Jose State. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Brittany, who will introduce the co-researchers to you and share a little bit more about their experiences.
Thank you so much, Heather, for the transition. We'll definitely begin with introductions. I definitely want to first thank everyone for being here and attending. It's been a whirlwind of the past 6-9 months to see this come together despite COVID-19 and all the transitions that we've had to make. So my name is Brittany Kirtner, and I served as the project coordinator, supporting and mentoring and guiding our co-researchers throughout their experience. And if each one would like to introduce themselves, we can then probably get started with our questions for the panel.
Hi, my name is Alberto Martinez, better known as Tiburon. I'm a senior. My major is graphic design with a minor in human systems integration.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Edith Urbano. I am a second year here, and I am a child and adolescent development major with a minor in sociology of education.
All right. Hi, I'm Isabel Angel Hernandez. I am a graduating senior, and my major is child development. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Hi everyone, my name is Dalia Hernandez. I'm also a senior. My major is behavioral science and I'm doing a minor in applied computing for behavioral and social science.
What's cracking, everybody? My name is Alberto Camacho. I'm a graduating senior, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm happy that y'all are here to see this into fruition.
So first things first, co-researchers, we're wondering what were some of the observations that you made throughout this experience? And can you share an example or maybe a story that helps highlight that for us?
Well, for me, one of the persons that I interviewed, she brought up that sometimes as students we're heard, but we're not listened to. And I thought that was interesting and ironic at the same time, because to hear someone is to listen to them. But I think in this case, when you hear someone, you just hear them, and when you're listening to your students, you're kind of putting an action to it, to what they're saying. And she brought up how at times she would ask a question or she would ask for help, and they would hear her out, but they wouldn't really do anything to answer it. So I thought, you know, what she was saying, it like resonated with me just because I've been there too. So it's pretty interesting. I don't know, it was cool though.
Something that I noticed across the board is that students are very aware that the school has resources for them, but it's them not knowing where to look for those resources. And it was funny because it seems like every student that I talked to had that same idea, where they knew that there's resources and that they needed to get to them, but they just didn't know how to get to them.
I feel like for me, I saw that a lot of the participants that I interviewed, it was kind of like the first time that they ever got to really like share their story, because I feel like they just go to school, they go to class, go to work, do their clubs and stuff, but it's really like, it was interesting that I felt like they were kind of appreciated because someone took the time to learn about their story. And I feel like they really like indulge into like describing everything that they've gone through, and how like that, all of what they've gone through has really shaped how like they are today, and like why it is that they're doing like what they're doing.
Yeah, and adding to that, I mean, it was really definitely really interesting to see how everyone's experience differs in the different colleges around campus. It's definitely not something we really think about, because I guess sometimes we're all so focused on our own learning stories, we don't really think about how everyone else's could be. So it was definitely interesting to see that.
Same thing with my participants. They all felt really relieved afterwards. After getting their interview, they felt the same. They felt like, wow, someone listened to me. And it's interesting because the participants were also my friends, and I always felt as myself as a friend to listen to. So it's different listening to their learning stories, and how I always thought we were similar, but there's complete differences in a lot of them. And it's just really, I think, powerful that they were able to give their experiences.
Thank you all for sharing your insight. I think something y'all have heard me said numerous times in our one-on-ones is how unique it is to be in their position at the same time while hearing about their stories. And I know that we've reflected of how they may have had an impact. It has opened our eyes into understanding that sometimes we have to be selfish as a college student to navigate our own path, but the opportunity to find our support system and find that community on campus is something that I think strengthens our ability to navigate any college system for sure. Anything else before moving on to the next question? All right. So next we're wondering, what do you hope that various audience, so current students, future students, alumni, faculty, and even administration, take away from this project? How has this shaped you going forward from here?
I feel like it's very easy to get lost in being a student and being on that student grind that you think that you're on your own. But talking to all these students, it felt like everybody was in the same struggle. It was just them getting lost in their own, I'm a student, I have to do this. But talking to various students, it felt like it was a unit, even though none of them knew each other. Like I clumped them up as a unit because everybody was kind of going through the same thing in a way.
I agree. A couple of participants had a couple of similar struggles and similar hurdles, such as being already judged for the color of their skin, or for not seeing a reflection of themselves within the university, and so that would lead them to feel already unmotivated to continue with their education. And so it's amazing to me how sometimes it's not sorry, I'm trying to formulate it correctly. Sometimes it's the unlimited support that connections on campuses give them to so they can succeed further on into their education. So I feel like that should be something that a lot of the audience members should take into consideration, kind of like continue supporting. Maybe you don't have to know their history, but just offer that unlimited support.
I feel like going off from that, something that I like saw between like the project is that I feel like some students don't acknowledge that they have so much depth within like their stories and just besides being students. So I feel like everyone that sees this project is gonna read it and be like, wow, this student has like so much to offer. And I feel like sometimes the students feel that they kind of have doubts of what they can accomplish because they feel like their academics are kind of challenging, work can be conflicting sometimes. But I feel like this is gonna give them the encouragement that we all go through like the same things, but like there's still like little victories that everyone goes through that still makes them feel much more than a student at the school.
Most definitely jumping off of what everyone has said, you know, the power of testimony, of testimonio is loaded with like that courage, you know, that we take as students, whether, you know, we're the head of the house and we're full timers, or, you know, parents, first generation, like all the variables that students go through, you know, like for them to be able to see this, and see and read the students, their peers' stories, it kind of just, it helps them click, you know, like at times there was a reoccurring theme with my participants where, you know, they get lost in academia because we're so, you know, zoned in onto like school, and they figure out whether if it's by having a mistake or a success that there's more to it than what they're doing, like more to it to school. So, you know, I think it helped me, you know, and it's gonna help me in the long run too as a future teacher to listen to my kids, listen to the students, and find out what their needs, because sometimes it's better to learn from them than for us to teach them. So it works in a unison.
Yeah, similarly, I can definitely relate to all that has been said. And many that know me will know that I'm aspiring in a career in student affairs and higher education. And so viewing the stories and having our one-on-ones and hearing the students' voices being genuinely and authentically pictured has definitely widened the lens that I'm hearing y'all talk about, where it's almost the separation and this reminding that there's a subjective experience happening, and for those of us that aspire to support that, we need an objective lens. So before moving on to the next question, anyone want to add in? Okay, moving along. So now that you've gone through this experience, what do you envision the future of learning should look like?
Well, going back to what I said off of the first question, I think as much as for students, for professors as well, I just hope that moving forward they do, it's kind of like a reminder that every student is different, every student is learning at a different pace, every student is going through their own personal issues. So I feel like there are definitely professors that are very understanding, but I know that there exist those that are not that much. So I hope that this can help to be just a little bit of a reminder to just pause and see what every student is experiencing.
I feel like the more communication between students and instructors there is, the better the schooling gets. I know just teachers have a lot of students, and it's easy to just focus on the really bad students because they're the ones that talk to them a lot, or the really good students who are the ones asking the questions. But there's a lot of in between those two that never really get any attention because they're either too shy or just for whatever reason they don't talk. But I think in community college, I had an instructor who had forced one-on-ones with his students, and he got a better sense of who they were. And I think he was probably one of like the most successful instructors that I've ever had. So I think more communication would definitely help. I don't know how that would work because teachers have a lot of students, but in a way that I think that would be a key solution to a lot of things.
Going off from what everyone has said, I also envision the Faces of Learning to be like a space where like a lot more students can share their stories. Because I feel like just knowing that they're acknowledged by like the school, I feel like is gonna be very significant in like the rest of their 4 years here and stuff. And I feel like going off what Octavio said, like having teachers or professors really like ask more questions about their students and stuff like that is really gonna make them feel more than a student, part of a community like within the classroom. For me, I had a professor this semester who like every like day he would ask every single student in the class like, how are you doing? How was your day? And I feel like that little like question would really like help the student acknowledge like their existence in the classroom besides just being a student going to class for academia, but just part of a community. And I feel like that's what a lot of students want. They want to be part of a community where they can go to school and find like their sense of like a family, I would say.
Hi, once again, it's Isabel. So from the question, which was like, how do we envision the future of learning to look like? From all the participants, from giving in my own interview, I would see a lot of flexibility because there's a lot of differences, there's a lot of changes from how teaching used to be to how it is now, as mentioned from one of my participants, Alexis, that it's not in the 1920s teaching style anymore, it's the 2020s teaching styles where a couple of Spartans, a couple of students are students that are parents, a couple of them have adversities that are coming into with the university, so providing like unconditional support, flexibility. I don't mind sharing my own story myself, which I have during the interview of like losing my father due to immigration reasons and having a professor sometimes not even ask like how I am, but offering that unconditional support of like, I'm here for any assignments I need to get done and I'm here to help kind of thing. So it's like offering that unconditional support, which hopefully is doable in the future, but I know it really is.
Thank you for sharing your stories and thank you for answering the questions we prepared. One thing that I'm really hearing from y'all is someone needs to hear these voices, right? We've made them into an online gallery. Y'all taken the photos, you've done the work, having interviews, captioning them, transcribing them, as I'm seeing some of you roll your eyes about transcription. But we need these voices to be listened to and not just heard, as Beto said earlier. So as I'm looking at the chat, Brian, you may have to summarize a little bit for me as I'm having it off to the side. But I think one question that I heard was hearing a little bit more about your experience using photography as a voice for our students. And before answering that, I want y'all to think back to the trainings that we had with Maria. Think back to that first time that you may have grabbed that camera, or those that have a previous experience in photography, using it as a method to provide, in a sense, a call to action to our participants. So if y'all can speak a little bit about maybe the transformative, challenging experience it was to hold that camera and work collaboratively with your participants to ensure that you're expressing their voice in a genuine manner.
For me, it was tough to use the camera just because I've never in my life held something so expensive that captures pictures other than my phone, you know. But it was a trip. It was a learning experience for myself, and it was hard at times to establish like an intimate relationship with the participant just to get that comfort level, because you know I'm a complete stranger to them and vice versa. So it it was fun at the same time to establish that connection with them, just because like when you break someone's I guess veil of comfort down to so that they become vulnerable and they answer your question honestly, it it's surprising because you're trying to formulate what to ask and how to ask it without tokenizing the person, without them feeling like an object or a subject, more so, and have them feel like this is a conversation that we've had for hours and hours on end. So that was, for me, that was what was challenging, and just trying to like just find a middle ground and some kind of comfort level with them.
I've been doing photography for a long time already, and the thing that I really love about photography is that it gives a face to something that you normally don't see a face to. So it's easy to get lost on statistics, it's easy to get lost in numbers, and in a way you treat them as such, statistics and numbers. But once you see a photo of somebody, you humanize that statistic, and it brings a whole different feeling to it. So with this project, I really wanted to get that across, and I think it was really good. I think only one of the pictures was the most successful in my mind, because she was just very open to all the questions that I had, all the things that I wanted her to do in photos. So like, I think that was the most successful. But overall, I think putting a face to the statistics helps a lot more than we think.
I agree with my fellow Clarissas say. I thought I had experience with the camera, but once we really got to it, I was struggling a lot with the camera, learning how to turn on flash with this fancy camera, whether I need flash or not. But I think at the end of the day, what was impactful for my participants as well for me is that they feel happy with the picture that we both taken together, because after listening to their interview, them being vulnerable, me being in their presence, being honored to listen to them, just making sure that the picture is to what they like, and that they feel that they feel powerful in it, that it tells their story, that they're able to depict whatever feeling they want in it, and that at the end of the day that they're just happy with it. So that's what I was looking for in the pictures that were taken.
As for me, I had like prior photography experience, but I really enjoyed being like the one taking the pictures because I felt like a professional over here, like taking their pictures and stuff. And I basically like guided them a little bit at the beginning, but I wanted my participants to have full control of the type of like picture that they wanted. So they would ask me, can I do this? Or can I like move over here? To be like, absolutely. Like we can be here for like 2 hours if you want. I just want to make sure that you get the picture that you want, because this is the picture that I want you to know that it's going to represent you as a student. So for me, I really enjoyed it, even though like I know like there was some like scheduling conflicts that both me and like my participants had, but I feel like we were able to make it work, and they were like pretty much satisfied with the pictures that we were able to get.
Yeah, and I also agree with everything my co-researchers have said as well. I also hadn't used a camera before. It was my first time, so it was definitely really difficult to learn. But I'm really glad that I got a chance to learn about it. And another thing was, I think just the challenge of taking photographs of people who are probably not used to it was also pretty challenging. I think of all my participants, only one was like used to taking pictures. And then so me not having the experience and them not really being used to getting photos taken of them definitely presented a big challenge. But I'm pretty happy about how it turned out in the end though.
And you all know how proud I am and how the whole team are of our student career researchers, because without you, as much as it felt like just submitting work into a Google Drive, it's turned into this, and now we're able to share and talk about it. So I'm gonna inquire Brian for some help of summarizing the chat questions, as I know you're seeing them come in and I missed a couple, but I wanna make sure we're able to interact with our audience and touch on all the notes that they've asked.
Yeah, definitely. We've had a few questions rolling in, and thank you to everyone who's attending today for contributing your questions and your thoughts so far. So I'll just go through these in order, but maybe since we do have a few that have come in, if, maybe just a couple of you respond to each one. So we had a question from Marcos who asked, I'd like to hear about anything you learned that surprised you or that you weren't expecting.
Something that really surprised me was one of my participants, his name is Pierce. And I'm used to being in a community that is really, really diverse. And you always hear about people who live in a bubble, but I never encounter them because I'm just so used to being in my diverse bubble. But he grew up in a very, I want to say, privileged place in LA. And he was talking about how coming to San Jose State, his lens was widened to other social economics situations. So it completely transformed him, and it was great to see that in the interview, and in his and just the way that he lit up when he was talking about how his friends are. He was really impressed with Mexican food because he's half Mexican, but he was like, oh, he's actually from Mexico and stuff like that, which was great to see because it does help to widen the lens for people who are going to different job fields to be aware of different people's I don't know, like places of where they come from.
I thought it was also like really surprising for me that another theme was that professors still don't know the names of the students, and they still don't make the attempt to learn the name or who their students are, even if it's just like surface level. Because we're at San Jose State, and we're in California, and I'd assume that the professors who are there because they love to do what they do, right? But a lot of the times, some of them are there for the check or the stipend or whatever it's called, or they've just lost the passion. And I think it's really frustrating, especially as a student, to hear that, because you know, for one, it's expensive to go to higher education, and then to go into your major and having your professor not know who you are, or not being understanding, or even not knowing your name is just, it takes away from like the ganas, the drive to go to class and be fully present. So I thought that's something that really stood out to me and was really surprising, just because I haven't experienced that in the English department or the Chicano Studies department, but in these other departments where, like in business, that have to do with a lot of interaction, or in engineering too, since we're in like the mecca of engineering. So it's surprising to see that still.
Yeah, I think between both of your responses, to me, it just made it apparent the importance of opening up communication and dialogue, and how that can really get you connected to folks from different backgrounds, different identities, and increase that level of awareness, and increase the strength of relationships. Or by not doing that, on the other side, it could really cut off a lot of those relationships and connection. So thank you for sharing that. We had another question from Rebecca that came through, comment then a question, said, I really loved seeing all the hearts and minds that made this project possible. What other voices do you feel we need to hear? So maybe Edith or Dahlia or Isabel, if you want to address Rebecca's question.
I think it would definitely be important to hear also professors' stories, just because we've talked a lot about how students are not really understood, but maybe we also don't know what obstacles professors are facing in getting through to their students. So I think that would be really important to hear.
Yeah, going on from that, I agree that we also need to like take into account professor stories, because I know like they have like obviously a lot of experience. So maybe just hearing their stories and maybe like the student story, we can find some similarities and eventually find like through that like students can get like job opportunities, internship opportunities, and just getting to know the professor beyond just a professor, just like a like an actual person, I would say, and just having that relationship and getting to know them, so we can further like support that communication and student.
Yeah, I like that the idea of really just expanding this whole idea. You know, you all obviously interacted primarily with undergraduate students, but really thinking about making it more of a community-wide project where you're using storytelling to use that as a way to bring people closer together and find what connects us. So we had another question from Thalia that said, great work. Did completing this research and studying these stories change any of your thoughts about what you want to do with your education or career? So if that applies to any of you, if you want to chime in.
Personally, for me, I did kind of always have this dream of like going into the field of engineering. So hearing a story from someone who comes from that department, it was definitely kind of frightening to me, just because it seems like in the College of Social Sciences, I've had a lot of support. I'm really thankful for the professors that I've encountered. But hearing what his story was and him feeling like it was more of a job than an actual learning space, it definitely kind of intimidated me. So I'm not sure it entirely changed my mind, but it definitely made me think about it.
The same applied with me. I believe I want to be a teacher, but now I feel like maybe I want to stretch out a little bit more and further looking into how can I help more students? How can I help more students from diverse backgrounds? So I'm really grateful for being part of Faithful Learning, just because like it it's it was able to help me listen to other students' stories and listen to like what they've gone through. And I know a lot of well, everybody on campus is working on helping students. So it's like, what else can I do to help students?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to think about because although you were taking time to learn about other folks in the community, your peers, your classmates, your friends, you were also then learning about yourself in the process. And I think that's a good transition to the next question, actually, from Dolores, who asked, what did you learn about yourself during this process? And more specifically, what did you learn about how each of your strengths contributes to making SJSU a better and more inclusive environment for all students? So if a couple of others want to chime in for that one.
Something that I learned about myself was I liked the idea that I was kind of like a talk show host for like the participants, because I was able to like hear their stories and stuff. But what I learned about most is that because I am a major in the education realm, that I really want to continue like striving to fix the education system to make it more equal for everyone, because learning everyone's stories, I learned that not everyone had the same educational opportunity leading them up to going to San Jose State, and I feel like that isn't fair for anyone actually. So I feel like that really like I feel like my strength has continued to show that I want to fight for equal education. And yeah.
Same as Edith. I learned how to be an activist at San Jose State, and so a form of activism, I always thought it was participating in marches, organizing meetings, and through Faces of Learning, I learned that there's other forms of activism and there's other forms of like supporting students, non-traditional students, and how to support and how to speak up and learning how to continue to advocate for many different kinds of students on campus.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. I think it's just really helpful to think about, yeah, the ways that you really can speak out, be active, play an active role, be participatory, and like really think about, you all talked about power, that was kind of an underlying theme a little bit. And that was talked about during the training, I remember from the fall, that you all went through, really thinking about photography and power and dynamics and power relationships and how that medium can really help elevate that. So Vincent asks, what are some of the greatest pieces of advice you took away from your participants?
Something that I took away from one of my participants, again, it's Pierce. He said something that I always kind of knew, but you get lost in the thinking of it. So we always think like we have to go to the best school to have the best opportunity. That'll open doors to the best jobs and everything. But he came from the mentality of like, your schooling is only worth until the next step. So he was saying that right now our schooling, it doesn't really matter where you come from, it's what you make of it. And I really like that idea of like how he saw this theory of like school and trying to be the better one, but in reality it's what you make out of it.
For me, one of my participants, her name's Odalis, she really reinforced the idea that to do things with intent and to have a purpose behind it, and to not be afraid también, to be fearless in what you're doing, because if you get caught up in that notion of fear, you know, you're so fixated on trying not to mess up or fail that at times that causes you to have those mistakes that could be prevented. So if you go in with some kind of confianza, some kind of confidence, you know, well, for her, that's how it worked for her. And it got me to think like, you know, if you go in not, you know, overconfident, but with security, it really allows you to showcase your work with confidence, and it allows you to formulate things without second guessing yourself. And I think that a lot of the times professors lack to instill that within their students too. So, you know, it's a combination of both things. So I would definitely, you know, for me as someone who's trying to teach high school in the east side of San Jose, which is one of the most underrepresented sides of San Jose, and the education here, you know, really sucks, you know, is to instill that confianza and confidence into my students, so then that way they can carry that on to higher education and not get lost in the world that they were told they would never be part of. So that way they can formulate and create, you know, a sense of community and a sense of like safety and comfort for people like themselves.
Yeah, I really like those pieces of advice, just really thinking about how to make the most out of an opportunity to carry you forward into whatever it is you're trying to do next, and taking it on fearlessly. But then, you know, on the flip side of that, thinking about how can we, who are part of the community and have access to different levels of power, like create the climate and the environment for people to be able to approach those opportunities in that manner. So appreciate that. We have a question from Elizabeth, who asked, what was the most common form of resilience you observed from your participants? So thinking about support from school, parents, peers, those sorts of things.
I feel like all the students were constantly looking for resources. And I think that was the most resilient thing I saw overall, just because they were asking other students, they were asking teachers. When I would talk to them, they would ask me if I knew about resources that they could use, and if I knew them, I would give it to them. And I feel like that's a pretty interesting resilience that students have, but I don't think they see it as such. But I also have that thing where I'm just like, anybody that I talk to, I'm constantly trying to pick their brain to see what I can, or the resources that I can get from them as well. You know, like picking their brain to seeing what I can use for myself as well.
As for me, some form of resilience that I saw through my participants was a lot of them were like considered a minority. We were all like people of color. And I feel like just identifying as that made all of my participants want to push more through, because they know that like the system wasn't created for them. So it just made them have more of a sense of, oh, I have to push through harder, because I know that this, like most educational institutions, are place for me not to really succeed. So I feel like through that, they were able to like, okay, I'm gonna break these barriers and make sure that I can get to that. And because a lot of my participants, they were all like my peers, my friends, and I feel like within our own circle, we were able to support each other. And I feel like that is like a really good form of resilience, because like we're all in this together, and together we can like get to the finish line.
You know, if I could add to what Edith said too, you know, with a lot of my participants, we come from underrepresented communities, so we've had to learn to navigate a system that was never meant for us, and a lot of them did that, and they did it in a way that requires a lot of code switching or just grinding it out, and that in itself is a form of resilience and a form of resistance too, because they were putting in the work, and at times they fell, but they got back up because they remembered, you know, we're in this together, and we have to set up the foundation for the next to come. So, you know, that was something that I see with my participants.
Yeah, I appreciate that commentary. Just that the whole idea of connection, identity, solidarity, and really leveraging that in terms of, you know, being resilient and being able to persist through those experiences, through that adversity. I did overlook one question from Heather, actually. I think this will be our last one. Actually, I think it's a good one to end on, since we're running out of time here. So looking ahead, now that you've gone through this experience, and you know, we know that this version of Faces of Learning is wrapping up this year, but we don't want this concept necessarily to go away. How do we keep these rich conversations going moving forward?
I think for me, it would be to instill testimonials, to incorporate the stories of our students into our pedagogies, or to be open with our students, and vice versa, you know, for us to be open with our professors and our professors to be open with us. So I think to help that keep that going would be just keep having these conversations, whether it be by taking your professor out to coffee, because I know that state offers that, you know, that $10 card to take them out to coffee, or just schedule office appointments, or even just get together with your peers and just chop it up in their office. So, you know, I think there's multiple ways to keep it going, and that's just one of the ones that are off the top of my head.
I feel like this project has turned into an art form in a way with the end product. And I think that's a great conversation starter. And I think that's a great way of keeping it going, because it's from us, from the initial project when we started, it was kind of fuzzy in my head, but seeing the end product and having examples, it's kind of, it's easier to understand what to do and how to voice things. So I think the end product will help the next phase of learning step that's going to happen.
Something I know that I can add, as y'all might still be thinking, is really going back to the why behind this work, why my role is created, why co-researchers are a thing, is because, in my opinion, after hearing student voices and even before, really hitting home on that notion from Izzy's participant that it's not 1920 anymore. There are a lot more resources, rights, and support for students. So in order to keep these conversations going, I think there needs to be a reframework of how we view education from all levels, K through 12 and higher ed. And that for some, especially at a commuter campus such as ours, it's more than clocking in and clocking out. And it's more than, why am I writing this paper that I have to turn in? And it's more than getting the supplies, using the resources to find those supplies and getting them, and sitting in a classroom for, in my case, in the EdCo program, a really long time. And so really thinking about why we did this work, and I hope the audience and those that view the gallery really hit home on why before the how. Because once I think we're able to understand what our students are saying, and even the ideas that some of us have already come up with, I think how we do that will flow after we're able to sit with what we need to strengthen.
Thanks, Brittany, for closing that out. And I think, you know, given that you've been sitting with this project for a while now, I'm curious if you could just share, what are the 2 or 3 big takeaways that you see looking across? I know that's a big question, but looking across all the stories and all of the interactions that our co-researchers have had, what do you see as the lessons that really just are shouting out for all of us to understand, who care about San Jose State and care about our students and want to make sure that we are supporting their success?
That's a really great question. And only because I have a limit to 2, I'll say 2. But more than welcome, and can share my email for those that may want to connect and talk more about this work. I think first and foremost is that sense of belonging is beyond crucial towards academic achievement of college students. It's something I've learned as I've been with San Jose State since 2014. I'm doing undergrad and now graduate school. And I say that because a lot of the themes that I noticed in the photos were about the, I think, experiences that may feel transactional and they shouldn't be. So for example, a student saying that we're more than our grades, that the GPA doesn't define me. And that transaction of, well, as long as I do my work and I get this grade, I think can be reformatted in a way of what was the practicum, what was the culminating experience, and the weight to deserve and put in the effort to receive that grade. Secondly, I believe that we know this, and I've said this many years as well, but I think the framework of the actions that follow need to be always evolving. And I think that we always say San Jose State is a diverse campus, because it is. It's fact. We know that our student population demographic is equalizing of all social identifiers. And I've always said, okay, what do we do with that? And being part of this project has really helped me understand what I can do with that and how I can do that, especially as I aspire to be the student that supports students. Some examples of that I think that San Jose State has done is providing those physical spaces that accommodate all the different backgrounds that we have. And it's evolving work. There will always be, I think, a need to listen and adapt and specifically evolve that work. So I think the big takeaways are that transactional experiences are more when you're opening your eyes to them, and that the cultural identity of a student really does influence how we are and are not able to navigate our collegiate experiences.
Great, thank you. And thank you to all of our panelists. I really, really appreciate you sharing your insights. For everybody who participated, thank you to you two for giving your time here on a Thursday afternoon. I would encourage you to keep the conversation going. I shared the link out to the book that is available and accessible to everyone, and it's only in digital form at the moment. We don't have any printed copies, but I would use that as a conversation starter, as somebody suggested earlier, and think about sharing your own story. There's an opportunity for students or for faculty to share, or staff to share their experiences as well, and would encourage you to think about that. And as you're looking at the book, really asking yourselves, what are you seeing? What are the themes that are emerging? What's surprising you? What's missing from some of the images and stories that you maybe were expecting to see and didn't see? And what are those lessons that we learn as a result of this that can influence how we do our work? Because I fully believe that we all come to this work every day dedicated to doing the right thing for our students, doing well by our students, and that we all want to continue to grow and improve so that we're doing the work better as our students change and evolve and have different conditions that we're all working within. Before we leave off, I want to acknowledge our advisors and supporters. So Rebecca Brisiaga, Brian Changduli for seeing us all the way through, including facilitating this conversation. Melinda Chimant, who helped us get started with this work early on. Maria Mathiodakis, who provided a lot of the training around photography techniques. Lily Gangai from the Chicanx Latinx Student Success Center, who helped us recruit some of our co-researchers, and Janine Perez, who also was instrumental in recruiting some of our co-researchers to this project. Also, a big shout out to Brittany for your leadership in facilitating all of this and learning new techniques, including how to put a book together in a digital environment. And then absolutely our co-researchers who stuck to it and went out of your comfort zones to share your own stories and to engage with people who maybe aren't part of your normal academic and social circles and collect their stories. As somebody mentioned earlier, this is a form of activism, this is a form of advocacy, and having stories that and faces and images that resonate for individuals beyond those numbers is a critical part of ensuring that we're responding to the strengths, the needs, and the opportunities that are presented before us. So thank you to Alberto, to Dalia, to Isabel, to Octavio, to Edith, and to Eliana. You guys are awesome, and we are so excited for you, particularly excited for our graduating seniors, but for all of you as you move into the next phases of your academic and professional lives. And I hope that you will continue to share your stories and to raise up the voices of others. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.